Okay, we're live, folks. Happy Wednesday.
Hello, everybody.
To the podcast. Hey, Dan. Hey, Adam. How are you?
Good. Just still can't get over the meeting yesterday. It was full of fireworks.
Youch.
You guys, I blame last night's city council meeting for the reason that I haven't showered today and I'm looking like a little dramatically greasy because that was 3 hours of my life that I can't get back. And I have to say, when I left the city council, the one thing I thought was like, okay, I'm going to get my Tuesday nights back. Wrong. Tuesday nights, I am still a slave to the city council. There was like probably 3 hour meeting last night. That was kind of wild. But really quickly, before we get into that, I just wanted to ask you both, what are your feelings about Robin Dalton? Would you describe them as very favorable, somewhat unfavorable, or very unfavorable?
Robin, if I'm correct, you are referring to a text questionnaire that went to, I got it. I think Dan said he got one. You got it, Robin. That went out that was originally the address. They screwed up. The address was from former Joanne Yepsen's home address. So she's very active in the Democratic committee, right? So we can safe to assume that this was a Democratic survey that went out.
Yes. So over the weekend, a text message went out that read the following. Saratoga Springs residents, please take a short survey to voice your opinion about the upcoming municipal election. Now, I know who this came from because you can kind of see my phone.
Not
well,
really.
If you can see my phone, if I scroll up, see, it came from the same phone number that Ron Kim sent me a text message from. So there's the text message right there. So you click through and you're like, all right, sure, I'll take a survey. I'm thinking I'll take a survey. So it's like, how likely are you to vote in this election? Then it asks if you think Saratoga Springs is headed on the right track or the wrong track. What's your opinion of Ron Kim, Chris Mathieson, John Safford? Who would you vote for mayor? What's your opinion of Jim Montnino, Tim Cole, Kristen Dart? Who would you vote for public safety commissioner? What's your opinion of, there's Adam. What's your opinion of Black Lives Matter? What's your opinion of Robin Dalton? And then what political party are you registered in and what is your gender?
So Dan,
are you running? Are you running a write-in campaign that I didn't know about?
Why, people? Why?
Yeah. I'll tell you my two takeaways from this.
Yeah.
My two takeaways are that the committee Democrats clearly use BLM if they think it is politically favorable, right? This isn't a just movement or a cause for them. It's a means to an end to an election, which again, those kind of politics I think are really, really kind of shallow, poor politics. Yeah. The second thing is, Robert, I don't know why would they want the favor? Maybe they're trying to gauge the power of the Saratoga podcast and using you as a barometer. I don't know.
All I know is that I noticed on the city Democrats, the city committee page on Monday, they shared like a negative article about me. And then a couple hours later, they deleted it. And so I was like, maybe they're getting poll results back in and they're finding them to be more favorable than they thought. I don't know.
I have to wonder, was that simply, let's take a shot at Robin Dalton, or was there a strategy to that? I could believe both, to be honest with you. Or I can believe either.
I have no idea.
Dan, I'll tell you why I don't think it's a shot, right? Because these polls are meant to be completely neutral. You pay a company come in, who theoretically has experience and a degree in taking polls that are unbiased, right? So I think the value of a poll is that you're getting unbiased. So you wouldn't want to steer people in any one direction or take shots at. My opinion of polls are meant to be just neutral, just not to lead anybody, because you really want to. You're taking polls for the analytics and the feedback, and you don't want that to be skewed by biasing answers that may not result in the polling place. So that's my opinion. Is that I think maybe they're just trying to figure out the popularity of this BLM Darrell Mount case, how much they can blame the previous administration. We've seen this in blaming the previous administration for pretty much for tax increases and lawyers' fees and all. I mean, they just if it's a problem, it's the previous administration, and maybe they're just trying to figure out if they can keep doing that, and if they seem like good guys, pinning Robin down for more crap.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figure. I figured they were trying to gauge whether or not I would be useful in political attack ads this election season, despite the fact I'm not running and have like nothing to really do with anything. But I think that's probably what they were trying to gauge.
I'm honestly a little jealous. I'm not. I wish they would have asked how people felt about me.
Maybe next time, Adam. Maybe next time. Anyway, moving on. City council recap from last night. And I also just want to let people know we also have we have two comments already. Let's see. Michelle Madigan said, oh yes, it is. I am also on Michelle Madigan's campaign team. Oh, good. Wait, this is also a good one. Tim Miller, Robin is annoying. Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate that constructive comment. Tim, you're awesome.
Again, how come nobody comments on me? Tim, anyway.
Why can't you be similarly annoying, Adam? Come on.
I might be. I don't know, because nobody polls me. Dan, you know what I'm talking about.
Anyway. So I just want to let people know, also, we have Chris Mathieson coming on later in the show, and we also have Tim Cole. So we have a mayoral candidate we're talking to and a public safety candidate. We have reached out to all the supervisor candidates, mayoral candidates, and public safety candidates to come on the show. The only no we've got so far is from Ron Kim, although we haven't heard back from Krista Dart's campaign yet. I'm hoping we will. So we will bring you interviews with all those candidates. Today, it will be with Tim and Chris. But before we get into that.
You essentially said it, Robin, but I want to clarify. We've invited all candidates.
Yes,
correct?
we have invited all candidates. So last night, the city council recap. So it started off with a bang. Former Commissioner Michelle Madigan spoke at the public hearing about the proposed budget. And she kind of, in my opinion, she really kind of slayed. She has 10 years of experience being the Commissioner of Finance. And she really hit a number of bullet points that I think reflect a lot of resident concerns about the proposed budget, from the extraordinary fund balances that the city council had when the previous administration left, how that fund balance increased, and all the unassigned and assigned reserves that the city has, and why, with all of that extra money, there would be a tax increase. And then she also hit on things like this city council promised the fire department and Local 343, which is their union, that they would deliver on putting four-person engines on. We used to run our fire engines with 3 people. Now we're running them with 4. That's an extraordinary amount of money that the city has to pay to staff a 3rd fire station. It would be an extraordinary amount of money if we just had the 2 stations that we had to increase staffing to cover minimum staffing that included 4-person engines. But now with a 3rd station, it requires hiring 16 new firefighters. And suddenly this administration is like, oh, the public safety budget has just skyrocketed and we don't know why, and how are we going to cover it? Well, that's one of the primary expenses, was the promise they made to the union that they would put 4-person engines on. So she was calling out like a multitude of points like that. And I think she was very effective in her public comment. What did you guys think?
If I recall, Mayor Kim tried interrupting her and she would have none of it.
So I'm actually really glad you brought that up. So at a public hearing, there's no established time limit on public comment. So it's different from the public comment that happens at a city council meeting where Ron Kim has imposed this 4-minute limit. So that was one of the reasons why Commissioner Madigan pushed back against Ron Kim trying to interrupt her so many times. There's no limit at a public hearing. So, and Mayor Kim it was not pretty. It was not pretty.
Yeah. My thoughts is that taxes now look like they're going to be raised for 2 years in a row. Commissioner Madigan did it once during COVID. Meanwhile, the Commissioner of Finance hired herself a personal assistant, and now ex-Commissioner Madigan called her out on it. Said, "My 10 years, I never felt that I probably needed an assistant, but I never felt that it was worth the public money to spend on one." So again, I think this council came in with a mandate. They've made some decisions that are very costly. Now they got, and there should be a political price to pay that when you raise taxes twice in 2 years, at the same time you're hiring yourself a personal assistant. I think the public should know this, and you shouldn't blame the previous administration for those kind of moves.
And that assistant was one of 30 hires that the city council made last year. So they went on a pretty significant hiring spree.
With that question, Robin, how many of those hires were new created positions, and how many were?
That's a really good question, and I don't have the answer to that, but that's a really good question.
Because they might just feel 30 high. Maybe that's just the attrition rate. I don't know, but again, the glaring one is the personal assistant for the person who's raising taxes.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
She
And
was
then,
wisely careful. Sorry to interrupt her. She was very wisely careful not to criticize the four person engines, but she said once you made that decision, you had an obligation to properly make sure you budget appropriately after that. She sort of called them out in a tactful or in a tactical way, I guess you could say.
you guys, we've got a lot of comments. Should I throw some of these up real quick?
Why not?
Okay, let's see. We have one on the poll. This was not a poll intended to be scientific or done by any professional. This was done by Joanne Yepsen, even had her address on it. I promise there was a less than noble agenda. Yeah, Gail, I agree. She rarely has noble agendas. Commissioner Madigan says she's hoping to be on next week. And then there may be a limit allowed on public hearings, but historically, city councils have not had time limits. If that's changed, I'm not sure when or how. And then Gail also said, note that while trying to interrupt Michelle, Kim did not make any attempt to address those who were yelling from the back and bullying her while she spoke. Yeah, there were a lot of people yelling from the background. And then also there were 39 new hires. That's a lot, you guys. That's a ton of people. That's a ton of people. And yet they still don't have a full police department. I mean, my God, priorities, you know? And then, of course, there's the glaring issue of Travelers dropping the city as its insurance carrier and an almost $1 million cost that the city is going to incur on an ongoing yearly basis to find a new insurance carrier. I mean, that's going to be a huge budget issue.
Yeah, this is bad because this is totally self-inflicted. You could see it you could see it playing out. This was maybe 6 months ago. Commissioner Moran spoke to this, saying if we pull risk and safety, then this will happen. And sure enough, Robin, you were in there. I'll let you describe exactly what happened. But the city's being sued by the risk and safety officer. We have no risk and safety officer. And Travelers, in their letter, said you are being dropped for your approach to risk and safety. So no matter how many times, again, you want to yell previous administration, this is just if Mayor Kim would have kept things status quo, we wouldn't have been incurring this huge increase, this huge cost.
I totally agree. So like the crux of the problem was that the risk and safety director, who for, almost 20 years was Marilyn Rivers, who did a phenomenal job. That job function was in the Commissioner of Accounts department. Ron Kim argued last year for it to be moved into the mayor's department. Commissioner Moran argued vociferously against that. And one of the things he said was that Ron Kim had told him personally that he didn't believe the city of Saratoga Springs even needed a risk and safety management program or this position. And so when Ron was able to finally successfully move the position into his department, the Marilyn Rivers, the former director of risk and safety, retired, sued the city for a hostile work environment, and then Ron Kim never filled that position, even though he had a list of eligible candidates from civil service ready to go, many of whom had great experience, qualified, ready to go. He did nothing with it, left the position vacant, and then kind of transferred some of the responsibilities over to one of the city attorneys, but really just didn't take it seriously. And we saw last night also in public comment, this is kind of wild, you guys, in the middle of public comment, a process server went up and was like, during the public hearing, and Ron Kim was like, this is a public hearing. And she was like, yeah, I don't care what it is. You've been served. Mm-hmm. And she was serving the city with a lawsuit. Oh, did you see that, Dan?
I missed that part. No.
Oh my God. I was like, what is happening? It was freaking wild. I was like, what the hell is happening? So apparently, Mike Grandy.
That's great though.
That's funny. I have to give public comment a 10 out of 10 because for entertainment factor, because it was just across the board.
You couldn't parody a show better than what was going on. It just was just hilarious.
And you're right, we laugh, but how serious is all this stuff? As you guys were talking about, this is like such a debacle city government lately, and it just continues. And let's face it, Ron Kim is the favorite to win this election. Things could happen, but right now, if you had to guess, it seems like it's Ron Kim's to lose. Not because of anything he did; he does a lot of things wrong, but he's got the party backing, he's got the support of the committee and so forth, and the politics of it. It is just it is humorous. Let's face it. It is. Someone said this stuff is better than Netflix, and it's true. But it's so serious and it's so bad in the end that we're all going to be harmed.
I know. And I think one of the things that Commissioner Madigan said last night was that, because one of the things that happened was that the public safety department had their budget workshop, and Commissioner Songvi and the other city council members, they were really negative talking about the commission form of government. Then they were really negative. Commissioner Songvi said it was, she basically took personal offense to the public safety budget request, the requested budget from public safety. She was just horrified by what they had requested. And she went through the public safety budget and just kind of like eviscerated it and what they had requested. And one of the things that Commissioner Madigan pointed out was that you're not shaming Commissioner Montagnino, which I think was kind of the intended effect, was to start trying to say that Commissioner Montagnino can't manage his department. You're shaming all the chiefs, the sergeants, the lieutenants, the clerks, all the people that are actually the faces who run that department, who put together those budgets, who are trying to reflect a need in that department. You're shaming the people in the department, you know? And yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that, except to say that these things are sometimes entertaining to watch, but the real life consequences are serious and dramatic and bad for Saratogians and the people who work in City Hall, especially.
I hope the voters are taking notice. And there's only a couple of contested elections this year. What a terrible shame of that. All three of us, we have those on the council that we, lean towards liking and those that we lean towards disliking. But it's just a shame that there's not a true two-party system here. I think the Republicans gave it everything they got this time around. It just didn't work out. I hope next time around, and not because I'm pro-Republican. If it was all Republicans, I'd be saying, geez, I wish the Democrats would get their act together so we can have some real choice in this city. One-party rule is bad.
Mike AB says polling shows that they're in a dead heat, Ron Kim and John Safford. So that's interesting information. And if that's the case, and we could be teed up for an upset in November, that would be very interesting. And I think not a lot of people would see that coming, but who knows?
That is, thanks, Mike, for clarifying that. And that's good. And then, and I'm not going to tell you how to vote, people, but God forbid, get out there and vote. It's, too late to register now, but if you're registered, make sure you vote, because there's plenty of people that are registered that simply don't show up. And with early voting, it's hard to find a valid excuse.
I will say John Safford came, who's the Republican mayoral candidate. He came to the city council last night and he made a public comment. And I thought his public comment was actually really constructive. He suggested that the city council ask for a representative from Travelers to come to one of the meetings and outline some of the problems they were having with the city's approach towards risk and safety, so that the city could comprehensively address it when looking for a new insurance carrier.
Yeah, he also brought up another interesting point, I thought, as well. And I thought that was a great idea, that this could have farther reaching ramifications too in our bond rating, right? Like a city with this much dysfunction is not theoretically going to carry a positive bond rating. We've had A double plus or the highest bond rating for years and years, but taxes being raised, city dysfunction, and no insurance, no liability insurance, or being in a high risk liability pool definitely does not lead to investor confidence, which bond rating agencies are rating.
And then that would make it a lot more expensive for us to borrow money, basically.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. We got to mention one more thing, because it's so timely and so important. It's a bit of a turn from what we're talking about, but it is all wrapped together. Is the jury verdict in the Darrell Mount lawsuit came in yesterday and found for the defense, namely the city. And
really quick, Dan, though, I just want to hit on one last thing with the city council meeting last night. Is that all right? Before we go into that. So one of the agenda items on the mayor's agenda was hiring outside counsel for a workplace investigation into discriminatory conduct in the workplace. And I guess this was directed towards Commissioner Montagnino's department and some of Commissioner Montagnino's behavior. And in public comment, an email was read that was kind of like lewd sounding, that I don't really want to repeat here. It wasn't great sounding, although Commissioner Montagnino said it lacked context and so forth. And
it wasn't the email, it was 2 sentences.
It was 2 sentences, correct, out of an email. That I think was connected to this workplace investigation. But the wild part of this was that, so the agenda item is read, it's seconded, there's discussion, and then Commissioner Montagnino says he wants to offer a friendly amendment to this agenda item. And his friendly amendment is to include the fact that he has heard Mayor Ron Kim make disparaging comments about Commissioner Moran's disease, citing a text message that was recently published where Mayor Kim called Commissioner Moran like a dysfunctional alcoholic or something to that effect, and wanted him removed from office and all this kind of crazy stuff. And then he said that he wanted. There were apparently multiple times where he had heard or other people had witnessed Commissioner Moran call people the R word or call people the fucking R word. And he wanted that to be included in this investigation. And then he also wanted included an allegation of Commissioner Songvi accusing a police sergeant of trading sexual favors for allowing someone to get out of an arrest. And she had said that not with factual basis, but as a rumor that she repeated. He wanted that included in this investigation. And then he also wanted included when Commissioner Golub said that the police department would be more likely to listen to a wealthy white woman than they would be to listen to a person of color. And so he also just dumped all those examples out in this friendly amendment that he wanted included in this workplace investigation. And I was like, what the hell am I hearing? Like, literally, what am I hearing? It was like
I was surprised that didn't break out into a fist fight. That was so awkward and ugly. Sorry to interrupt you, Robin. Keep going.
No, it was. Was it not crazy? It was. I was like, I don't know what this is. Bananas. What I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, I don't. You know what? I don't blame them, because the fact is they took 2 sentences at it. There's no context to that email. All the commissioners have. I mean, look how many workplace harassment or unfriendly workplace lawsuits there are against the city right now. Yeah. And look, and the fact that they want to pay more money to hire counsel to look into something about Jim speaking and not speaking sexually about. It appears about his wife, but there's no explicit words. Writing was the word, the worst. You know,
I have the quote in front of me, Adam, from the Times Union. If you folks want me to read it,
go for it.
Okay. This is from a Times Union article from this morning. I believe it was Wendy Libertor. I apologize if I'm not crediting it properly. There was an email going back, something about AFIB back and forth, and what's our atrial fibrillation, known as AFIB. And apparently at one point, one Commissioner Montanino's email said, quote, "My first reaction upon reading your email was, please don't tell my wife that AFIB is a major heart defect that renders one not rideable, as my AFIB never got in the way of that before." I think that is the crux of the matter right there, that line. And the Times Union described that as risque.
What's wrong with that? We want to hire. Come on. We got to spend more money, spend more time, because Monty's got a healthy relationship with his wife.
Okay, I just want to say, I'm going to throw up this one comment, you guys. Mike says, wonder how she got that email. And I think he makes a really good point here, because the lawsuit that was served last night was about FOIL requests, and the city not responding to FOIL requests coming from the Republican committee chair in a timely manner. Months and months had gone by. These FOIL requests weren't responded to. And yet there's all these other politically advantageous foils that seem to be coming out in a very timely manner, such as someone from the public having this email about Commissioner Montanino. And so I think there's really something to that, you know?
There's a 2-tier system, the foils they want to get out and the foils they want to cover up.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's actually making the sexual harassment complaint? I have no idea. The city council, a woman or man. See, that's all. Those are all excellent questions, Commissioner Madigan, and they were not answered last night at all.
Let me point out here, Commissioner Montanino should not have written that. We can comment on how important it is, whether it's worthy of an investigation and so forth. It was poor choice on his part. He should not have put that in an email. Not nearly as bad as what others had put in emails, but it just wasn't a wise decision.
He just said the horse. They're talking about selling a horse. He's like, the horse is still rideable if it's got AFib. I am.
Can we just not? Can we strike the word rideable from the rest of the podcast?
I give him a little comedic license to make, right? Like, come on, it's comedy.
Not in 2023. Not in this city atmosphere.
Yeah.
Not in an email.
No. I hid under my I hid under my shirt for that. We have a comment here. how would you word search a request for that FOIL information? Excellent freaking question. I have no idea how you would search for that. I have not one clue.
I know how you would. Writable. Hey, real quick. The article was by a H. Rose Schneider from the Times-Union.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
So, yeah, believe it or not, it just seems like the Times-Union carrying the Democratic Committee's water. That's not Wendy Lipitor. Maybe she's got a little minion under her now. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, no, I thought it was kind of a balanced article. Again, they used the word risque, which that word seemed to downplay the importance of it. So I don't know that it was a biased article. It might have been, but
maybe I'm biased.
You guys, I have found that, so like yesterday, so going back to what you had brought up before, Dan, the Daryl Mount case, we had a verdict in the Daryl Mount case yesterday, which was, such a long time coming. I clicked on the Times-Union's coverage and I found it to be surprisingly unbiased. And I was like, wow, this is like a surprisingly accurate article from the Times-Union. I was shocked. And then I noticed that the author was not Wendy Lipitor. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And I have observed that like 2 or 3 times over the last week or two. I've read an article, I thought it was unbiased, and then I've noticed it wasn't written by her. So there may be hope over there with another writer.
All right, H. Rose, prove us wrong. All right, we got guests, right? I mean,
we have guests. We have we have public safety candidate Tim Cole joining us. Tim, how are you?
Good afternoon. I'm fine. Thank you. Nice to see everyone.
Nice to see you as well. Since we were just talking about it, I would love to have your opinion on the Daryl Mount verdict, if you don't mind sharing, and what you think it means for the city.
Yeah, certainly. So that case has been going on for quite some time, at least right around 10 years. And I attended the opening arguments or opening statements at the trial. And I just felt like, at the opening statements, there were really no facts at all that indicated the Saratoga Springs Police Department, either beat Daryl Mounts or killed him. And really, for me, for watching, the plaintiff's attorney, if you're going to make an allegation that someone killed someone, you have to at least identify a police officer. You can't just say he died at the hands of the police in general. So, I thought the case was, again, there's just no facts to support that. There's no facts at all ever to even open a criminal investigation. The Saratoga County District Attorney's Office refused to open one. Certainly, the Attorney General's office didn't open one. The FBI, who does civil rights investigations, didn't open an investigation as well. But I will comment about trials. I think trials are great. It's a great way for us to get facts. It's hard to get facts in this world today that you can rely on, that's corroborated, and that's a way for our public to get it. So I hope it provides some closure for people in this community.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I really hope it does too. And I think, for everyone in the Saratoga Springs Police Department who's been in the police department, who's in the police department currently, hopefully they all walked around with a little spring in their step yesterday, because I think that it was the repudiation of a lot of horrific accusations that's been a long time coming,
No, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
so anyhow, you are running to be a part of this circus, to be sorry, we've just been talking about like the crazy city council meeting. So now I have so much respect for the fact that you've actually thrown your hat in the ring and you're running for the commissioner of public safety position. We obviously, in my opinion, need some changes on that city council table, because what's been happening and the dysfunction and the unprofessionalism, it's just got to end somewhere. So can you tell us why, just generally speaking, you were motivated to run for this office?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's been ongoing for about a year. The city has some challenges with a growing homeless population, which is certainly not unique to Saratoga Springs. That's happening in many cities in America. And with that, we have increase of panhandling, and sometimes it's related to the homeless, and sometimes it's not, as you know, Robin. But we have challenges now with an increase of crime in certain categories. We have challenges with short-term rentals and challenges still with the 2 a.m. closing time. So, I have a 30-year, record in the FBI. I was a special agent, a supervisory special agent, and I believe, I have the experience and skill set to at least address some of those challenges if I'm fortunate enough to be elected.
Tim, let me ask you about your history with the FBI. There was a case that one of your opponents tried to make controversial about you leading to the arrest of a Arab man for his ties with radical Islam and terrorism. Some of the things that came out with the trial was his connection with Hamas and him meeting with Hamas. With your background in the federal government, the FBI and I think this is really the forefront right now. Does Saratoga are there weak points in Saratoga? Does Saratoga have to have terrorism concerns? I know we've shut down street festivals before because we weren't able to properly mitigate the risk for terrorism. Is there anything on that national level that you could see affecting Saratoga?
Well, so, Hamas is a designated terrorist organization by law, right? So, there's a process to get put on that list. And that means, if you send money to Hamas and they're a designated terrorist organization, you're providing material support. So, of course, I stand obviously with Israel. I've trained with the Israelis. I've been to Tel Aviv. I supervised a team that we went over there and worked on the counterterrorism mission. I'm well versed in Hamas. I did a local terrorism case here. Yassine Aref was the subject, and he was convicted after trial. He had connections to a Hamas leader. His name was Ahmad al-Alami, and he himself was a designated terrorist. So not just was Hamas designated, he was designated, and they talked about their role together. So it's not. So to say someone here in the capital region, it's not far-fetched to say that they don't have a connection to Hamas. So I'm no longer with the FBI, so I don't have access to that classified information or the information that's coming. But rest assured, I know the JTTF is working hard to keep us all safe.
Tim, did you happen to catch the debate last night over waiving the fees for extra patrols for our Jewish houses of worship?
Yes, I did. Yep.
Can you give us your thoughts or feelings about that debate? Because I found it to be incredibly demoralizing.
Well, it's a little confusing to me because if you have, in other words, if you're in a city and you have a threat posture that increases, right? So anywhere, and let's use the synagogue. Of course, the Saratoga Springs Police Department is going to do extra patrols there, to keep those folks safe. And they're going to coordinate like they do every day with state and local partners who are on the Joint Terrorism Task Force. The fee situation is a little confusing because I know there's police agencies, even Albany Police Department, they collect fees for special events like the Freihofers Run. They charge extra fees for police overtime. Even I know, like in New York City, like at the Yankee games, I have really close friends that get hired they get a paycheck directly from the Yankees because they get paid for extra patrols. So I think there's two separate situations. If you want extra patrols, you can pay for that service, but your general policing should be obviously the responsibility of our police department.
Yeah.
And so to be clear, Tim, these patrols at the houses of worship, are they extra patrols or are they part of the responsibility of the Saratoga PD?
Yeah, so that's the question. So, if the synagogue says, hey, we want 5 cars here 24/7, that's above and beyond, they would have to pay for that. Right. So because Saratoga Springs doesn't have that capability. So they'll do it. But Saratoga Springs, I know, will do whatever they can to keep them safe based on the threat. Right. And the vulnerability. And if they didn't have enough resources like they always do, they would call in the county sheriffs, they'd call in the state police, they'd call the FBI, and we would give all the resources necessary to keep those folks safe. We do community outreach, the FBI, with those synagogues all over the capital region, and I've done them before as well to make sure that we're protecting them.
Tim, that was a good explanation you had there because, of course, the city on its own is going to have increased and focused patrols around the houses of the Jewish houses of worship and so forth. But like you said, the synagogues themselves may want very specific levels of policing that they determine, not that the city police department would determine, and that's where the payment would come in, correct?
That's my understanding. And I know there's some synagogues like in New York City that have their own private security. So they fund that themselves as well. That's another example.
I think that was what made it so confusing last night, was that it was contextualized as 2 hours of extra patrols every day at $75 an hour from now through like the end of November or December. And so it was like, which was like $150 a day, but it wasn't clear if that was part of what our stepped up policing would have been anyway, or if that was beyond what we were already delivering due to the, active threat level that we're all like aware of. So I think it made it all really confusing. But at the end of the day, it was 5 people all agreeing to the fact that these Jewish houses of worship shouldn't be charged for the police patrols now in this context at all whatsoever. All 5 of them agreed, but it led to like 30 minutes of arguing. And it was just
ugly arguing.
Really
attacks and ugly arguing.
Yeah, and I will say it was confusing for me as well, and I'm just providing the explanation that I think was reasonable.
Tim,
but I think.
I've got I guess it's sort of a follow up. Let's go ahead a few weeks. Things, this is still an election. It isn't over, but you've been hitting the pavement since May, I think. You've been campaigning hard. Things, the way things fell with 3 candidates, things may be looking good for you. You've been smart enough in the past to say it isn't over till it's over. Ain't over till it's over. Yogi Berra, going to another Yankees reference. November 8th, let's say you win. You are the commissioner-elect. What is on your mind at that point? What is going to keep you up at night? You've got almost 2 months before you take office. What are the first 2 or 3 things, the most important 2 or 3 things you think you would have to address as the public safety commissioner in this city?
Yeah, I think, and I come from a background of prioritizing threats and vulnerabilities, right? So everyone has limited resources. You need to prioritize the threat. So when I look at it, what's a threat to the city or vulnerability for the city is the growing homeless problem. If you look now, we have the low barrier shelter, the one on Adelphi Street, they have 30 beds. Now the Code Blue shelter is going to open up with 75 beds. So that's 105 beds now. Last year, we only had 60. So that's a big increase of 50% of more folks that are homeless. That's a complicated, comprehensive plan to deal with that. And we have something here that I just think is underutilized, and that is the outreach or homeless court that's ran by Judge Vero and Rise. And some of these folks need a little push to get into the system to get the help that they need. So if you ticket a homeless person for an ordinance violation, they will get in front of Judge Vero and she will sentence them to mandatory drug counseling or mental health services. And that is a cutting edge program that we have in Saratoga Springs. And I just don't think it's being used enough, so that's something that is of interest to me. I want to work with that and try to get the homeless the help that they need for sure. And that's a priority of mine.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Tim, do you think that one of the things that I was watching last week was the public safety workshop? And I was really dismayed that the commissioner wasn't advocating for his department's budget the way I thought he should have been. And I'm really concerned about the numbers in the police department, the open positions, the lack of recruits that we got in the last recruiting cycle. How do you think you might be able to better advocate for the police department and help fill some of those positions?
Right. So, I watched that. I didn't go to it because I missed it, but I watched it on video as well. I think there was some hope that the positions seem to be getting filled, right? So, and I think one of the issues is the really kind of low pay when you look at it. When you look at the starting salary of $45,000 for a police officer, that's very low. And 25 years for Saratoga Springs police officer without overtime, they make around $90,000. And I think the same state trooper, I think Dan knows this, makes about $130,000. That's quite a disparity, So the bottom line is, like other communities, if you can't, you need to be able to recruit police officers, and you have to make them feel supported and welcome. We have a great community here. We could bring them here and show them all the business leaders to make them feel welcome. It's almost like recruiting for a sports team, right? They're going to go to whoever loves them the most. That's how what coaches do when they're recruiting, and we have to do the same thing. And if we need to pay them more money, even bonuses, and we also then are going to have to pay retention bonuses to the police officers as well. But that's something we're going to have to do. The solution is not to lower standards for psychological testing for sure. That's a recipe for disaster.
And let's just point out that was something that the current commissioner suggested.
That's correct. To minimize psychological standards. I just don't think that's proper, and we shouldn't be going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you have my vote just based on that answer alone, because I would love to see. I would love nothing more than to see the base salary for our police officers raised. I think that would be tremendous. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Obviously, I'm a little biased. I love those guys and ladies.
Yeah.
It's just in the news this week, the delays, if you will, of the east side, the new fire department on Henning Avenue, on Naira property there. Do you have any thought? God forbid, if in January that's still not staffed, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, my thoughts are clear, right? So I think it's going to get open. I think they're trying to get enough people trained to get it open. If not, they'll open on overtime. So I'm pretty confident that that's going to open. I think the concern is for the fire department is, moving forward, how do we put that money away when that SAFER grant goes away to continue to pay our firefighters? It's really, it's foolish in my view to hire all these firefighters and train them and then get into a position where you have to lay them off. I think that's foolish. So we have to make sure we're putting money away to pay them when that SAFER grant expires, and maybe there'll be an opportunity to re-up the SAFER grant. We're not sure yet, but I think that's the biggest issue with that moving forward.
Excellent. Tim, we've been asking, or I've been asking all the candidates this, anyone that you have, who's the most kind of surprising or interesting or different person that you kind of run into while you've been campaigning? Anyone that comes to mind that you've met?
Well, so I met a lot of the business leaders in the community, right? And I'm really impressed with all of them, right? So they've led great businesses here in the community. They give a lot back to the community. But the one person, I'm thinking about this now, that stands out in my mind is actually the former mayor, A.C. Riley. I met her, and she's been kind to me. I've asked her questions because I'm a rookie in politics, and she just has been kind. And not only was she the mayor, but she was a county supervisor. So she knows that it's so important to coordinate with the county and have good relationships with the county. So that's one person, and she welcomed me into her home, and we met some of her neighbors. And that's someone that, look, we all know that we should go through life and be respectful to people and have dignity. But sometimes, every once in a while, you need a voice to remind you that that's the proper way to go. And she did that for me.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah, she's pretty incredible. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
I've never met her.
Dan and Adam, I'm sorry. Do you guys have any more questions before we let Tim go?
One last question. You've talked about how crime is rising in Saratoga. And maybe we've covered this already. Is there one? All right, this is the low-hanging fruit that I can do on day one or week one or month one as the new commissioner of public safety to make Saratoga a safer city.
Yeah, so I've been advocating for a foot patrol, and they used to call it New York City community policing. Now they call it neighborhood policing, and they've started to do that. The police department, and it's my understanding it's working well. They call it a beat cop, right? So that's the police officer that's walks up and down Broadway. He or she learns the vulnerabilities of the businesses. They learn incredible information. They can intersect the homeless before they start using drugs to deal with being homeless. But there's a concept called omnipresent policing, not to get you into the police world, but it's really common sense. If a bad person is going to commit a crime and they say a police officer, they're not likely to do it when the police officer is there. So that's something that I need to look at. I need to work with the police department, with the union, to see if we could expand that, because I think it would be a great success.
Tim,
Excellent.
my last question for you is, we saw last night, we've seen it for really a year plus now. This city council at times is going after some others' throats within the council. How is Tim Cole gonna be someone that is a bit of a peacemaker, gets along for the common good? You're in the One Saratoga party, which is city before party. How will you be an asset in that vein?
Well, I think you need to lead by example, and it starts with treating each other with respect and dignity, even if you disagree on issues. And I've said this before, we can't expect the public to treat us with respect and dignity if we're not treating each other with respect and dignity. And I think that goes a long way, right? If you just you have to be consistent, and I'm not saying I'm perfect or anyone's perfect. Sometimes, you might lose your temper. I understand that. But really, we need to treat each other with respect and dignity. And then, obviously, I've been a proponent of a sergeant of arms model. At least let's talk about it to see if it's feasible here in Saratoga Springs for the city council meetings.
I think that's such a great idea. And not to toot my own horn, but for 2 years I've sat on that city council with some of the nastiest public comment sessions we've ever had in a really heated environment. I did not lose my temper once. I mean, you can go back and look at those meetings. It's not difficult to sit there with some kind of decorum and professionalism. And I think that you're so dead on when you say you have to lead by example, because how do you expect your colleagues, members of the public, to behave better than you do? If you're gonna act like children, you just can't expect better from people who are coming to the city council meetings and how they're going to be treating the city council. And you set the tone. And I've just been so disappointed with how the city council has really lowered the standards of our discourse as a city. It's just been really demoralizing and sad as a city to see the discourse, just bottom out the way it has. So I would love to see someone get on that city council and raise things back up to the standards that I think we're all used to.
Yes, no, I agree, and I'll just finish. I've been going door to door for quite some time, and that really is the biggest issue. Consistent. People are concerned about the city council meetings, the dysfunction and chaos, and they feel like it's embarrassing for the city. So we need to fix that. We need to repair that.
I mean, last night was an absolute, unqualified, and total shit show embarrassment. There is no other way to describe how that group managed that council meeting last night. I mean, it was a total disaster, and it's like that more often than it's not. It just is. So I think that the public feedback that you're getting from people, it's dead on. More people are watching this than I think the council suspects. And, Mayor Kim has gone on record saying there's only been 2 times a council meeting's been shut down and every other meeting has gone, just super smoothly.
Yeah.
Nobody believes that. People see it on social media. If they're not watching the meetings, you can watch the meetings afterwards, or they're, the Saratoga podcast, we get a ton of views. We talk about this stuff all the time. So it would be great to see you elected and bring some decorum back to these meetings. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your taking the time and wish you the best of luck.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Good to see everyone. All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Yeah. Hey guys.
Okay.
It was great to have another candidate on. Now we were going to have Chris Mattison on, but I don't see him. So he may not be joining us today, in which case we will see if we can bring him back next week. But it was great to have Tim on. And I just think one of the assets of his experience is that he's obviously had to deal with so many different types of people in his FBI, with all of his FBI experience and all the different things he's done in that capacity. And I just think you really need someone who's dealt with a lot of challenging personalities in different agencies and different bodies. I mean, you need that kind of experience to come in and manage this group of people in particular, 3 of whom we know are going to be sitting there for the next 2 years.
Yeah. I agree, Robin. He gives me just incredible confidence. Things are in his favor to win. I hope he wins. I expect him to win. We need a new council next year, and even if it's some of the same people, meaning the interactions and there needs to be cooperation and common good. And Tim could be a catalyst for that, as well as possibly one of the other mayoral candidates. But like I said earlier, they both got at least one of them has uphill battle.
I also just want to say, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dan.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know Kristen Dart has also worked with a lot of different people in a lot of different capacities, and I would love for her to come on and talk about those with us. I just think it's really important. And I know she's done good work on the Civilian Review Board, and she's volunteered in a lot of capacities in the city. And so I'd love for her to be able to come on and discuss those, because I don't want us to talk about this race as if she's not in it. She is, and she has gotten support from this entire city council. And save for obviously Jim Montagnino, who's running, she's gotten support from a lot of the Democrats in the city. And so,
yeah, let me just, really interesting. I thought about last night, and this happened with two different people connected to the Democratic Party committee.
Oh yeah,
Otis Maxwell, the head of the Democratic Party, got up there and talked about the Democrats and the Democrats winning, and he said he hopes to see the 5 of them back. He clearly was, without coming out and outright endorsing Jim Montagnino, was endorsing Jim Montagnino. Then there was another gentleman associated with the Democratic committee, and Robin, maybe you knew who he was. And he talked about Jim Montagnino and how they expected him to do great things, and you were waiting for him to pounce, and he said,
right?
You stood up to the BLM trying to shut down our city meetings, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. So it seems like some really institutionalized Democratic figures there are there supporting Jim. It was really interesting. What were your thoughts on that? And do you know who that guy was?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because actually, so Ron Kim did this interview with WAMC with Lucas Willard. And in the interview, Lucas said, he asked, is there a division in the Democratic Party in Saratoga? And Ron Kim was like, no, like, oh, what are you talking about? There's no division. There's a massive division. Mm-hmm. And last night we saw that on full display. The chair of the city Democratic committee sat there and endorsed the 5 sitting city council members, which includes Jim Montagnino. There was another person from the city Democratic committee who represents District 2 that came and spoke very flatteringly about Jim Montagnino to a city council that has all endorsed a person running against Jim Montagnino. So there's clearly a big divide between
where area 2? Where what Robin?
District 2? I actually have no idea off the top.
All right.
I should know, but there's so many districts, and I don't know District 2 off the top of my head. Do you, Dan?
I do not. You mean voting district 2? Is that what?
Yeah, voting district within the city.
Yeah, I don't know. I would guess the west side, but I just simply don't know. While you're looking at them, I just have had Kristen Dart started earlier and tried for the Democratic endorsement, I think it would have been hers to get. She would have gotten that endorsement, but she started late, and therefore she really only had one option, and that was independent route.
Now, there are many conspiracy theories about her candidacy, that she was convinced to run by the city council, some of the city council members who have this disdain for Jim Montagnino, simply because they wanted a spoiler candidate on a third party line to ensure that Jim Montagnino lost, and that she was made whatever promises, moving forward in terms of, I don't know, politics or whatever. And that's why she entered so late. I have zero idea if there's any truth to that. But again, I would love to talk to her about why she chose to run as a third party candidate, why she chose to run on a community first independent line, and what she truly thinks her chances of success are on that line. Because Adam and I both know it's virtually impossible to get elected if you don't have a major party line, meaning a Republican or Democratic line.
And as I understand it, Robin, you invited her on this show. She confirmed that she received the invitation, but she still hasn't followed through to actually get on. Is that correct?
I've invited her twice. The first time she was going to talk about it with her team and get back to me. She didn't get back to me. The second time I've asked her for her email address. I sent her an email inviting her on the show, and I haven't heard back from that invitation yet. Okay. By the way, Mary Flanagan, who knows everything about everything in terms of local politics, shout out Mary Flanagan, said District 2 is the north side. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. So anyhow, I would just love for her to come on just to get a balanced, view of all the folks running for this position. Although I think that we just lost Adam. But I think that by the numbers, and when you look at the breakdown of the numbers and who's running on what line and the trends historically, I think that, and the polling that's happened lately, I think that things are looking good for Tim. But, it's not over till it's over.
Exactly. Yeah, we did lose Adam.
Yeah.
District 2, North Side. Does that mean the Skidmore district? Is that what the
No, North Side is the other side of town. North Side is like over. Oh no, I'm sorry. You're right. North Side. Am I making this up? No, East. Yeah, North Side
like
is
North
over.
Broadway in essence?
Yeah, correct. Oh, Adam's back. Okay, there he is.
Okay.
Uh,
Should we jump to Cheers and Jeers or?
Oh, wait, Charlie. Yes, Charlie Samuels just said, make sure you talk about yesterday's mass text from Matisse and disparaging Kim. Yes, there was a text message that was sent out yesterday.
I did not see it.
I guess you didn't see it either. I got this one too. I get all the text messages. Where is it? This text message was it was a quote from WNYT about it actually wasn't. Oh yeah, it was disparaging Kim. Kim. It was a quote from Jim Montenegro talking about the city's insurance liability, and then failed Mayor Ron Kim being responsible for the city's liability insurance being dropped. And then it was on election day. You have another option, former Commissioner of Public Safety Chris Mathieson. So there's that. Yes, there was another text. We're getting into text message season, you guys, and I will say
mailer season and
in mailer season, it can be a little intrusive though, the text messaging. I will say, if you haven't like opted in for these text messages, and obviously, not all of us have opted in for all of these text messages. I'm sure I opted in for the Chris Mathieson one, but I'm sure I did not opt in for a Joanne Yepsen survey. Thanks, Joanne.
With your name on it.
Yeah.
Shout out Joanne again. Anyhow, should we move into our cheers and jeers, you guys? Because we're coming up on.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What do you got?
All right, I'll go. First, this is everything we talked about. There's a lot going on nationally. Mayor Kim, by one of the speakers yesterday, who we know and like, and I forget his name, but he's always there, was positive messaging, talked about the city
Bill.
and Mayor Kim, Bill, taking a stance on Israel. And I will cheer Mayor Kim. He's been very, I think, very clear on he's showed up for pro-Israel rallies. He had a moment of silence at the meeting yesterday, the city council meeting. So as much as we like to barb him sometimes, there's things that are larger than local politics. And so cheers to Mayor Kim for showing his support for Israel. My jeer goes to the head of Democratic Party, Otis Maxwell. I was in a Facebook debate, and I'm not one of these people who needs everybody to come out and shame Hamas, but I do need political leaders too. I do need political leaders to take a stance, and he in this Facebook argument we're having really took a neutral spot, where there's bad guys on both sides. And it's like Donald Trump saying, "Oh, there's good." No, what Hamas did after these attacks needs to be condemned. It cannot be equated to what the Israel, but whether you like the Israel government or object to what they did, it's nothing like killing babies and burning people in front of their families. And you cannot equate these two governments and this terror organization with a legitimate, duly elected democratic government, one and a small little one in the sea of authoritarian governments. So jeers to the head of the Democratic Party for not taking a stance and saying, listen, we pray for the Palestinians, we pray for the innocent who are dying, but what Hamas did was horrendous, and it was on a level that the Jews haven't seen since the Holocaust. So sorry guys, I know sometimes my jeers and jeers get heavy, but anyway.
No. It's personal, you know what I mean, and it's important, so we understand.
Yeah, you go through life with the last name Israel. You learn to have a certain bond. But all right, so you guys lighten the mood.
I can go light because I was thinking to myself this whole time, like, wow, you're right. This is heavy. It's serious. It's important. What I have is much lighter. I won't say it's unimportant, but it's hyper local and it is lighter. So I got two cheers. A shout out to both Saratoga and the YMCA a week and a half ago. They had their first ever Saratoga Fall Foliage Ride. Unfortunately for them, Saturdays got rained out. They actually canceled it ahead of time because they just didn't want to put any bicyclists in danger, which was difficult to do because people came in from out of town, but they did the right thing and safety first. Good for them. On Sunday, they did bike and they had a good time. Their first time out, they had a 92 registrants. So
Awesome.
good for them. And build upon that. They're going to have it next year, I believe. That's their stated intention when I spoke to them about a month ago, anyway. So they're going to build on that. So good for them. It's important. It could be, it could be a bit of an economic driver. You look at the Boilermaker, for instance, the big run in Utica. You can't get a hotel room there. You can't get a restaurant there. So this could build in a few years. So good for them. A really positive thing. Sticking with the bicycle vein on my second cheer. Union Avenue out near Saratoga National. They added the bike lanes there. It looks beautiful. It looks safe. I guess everything's relative when you're talking about bicycles on a highway, but safer than it ever was. They're clearly marked. There's some spacing there. And then I know the city's version of Union Avenue upgrades, be west of East Avenue, I believe, are forthcoming and they're controversial. But let me just say, I get the feeling Union Avenue in a year or two is going to look notably different and notably improved. Again, acknowledging that there are some issues there. Not everything should be one way. There should be a give and take on the city portion of that or the west of East Avenue portion of it. But I'm high on what Union Avenue is going to look like as a former resident of Union Avenue.
I'm going to do a quick cheer for pretty much everybody who came out last night and public commented. I think it takes a lot to put yourself in the position of coming to the city council meeting and making a public comment. And we had a lot of residents come and make really articulate, they really thought them out public comments. They were very passionate about what they were saying, and I applaud them for coming out. I also want to applaud everyone right now who's running for local office, because local campaigns right now with 2 or 3 weeks left to go, you're really in like the grind mode, and it's exhausting and it's hard, and it just gets more exhausting and harder over the next 2-3 weeks. And so I just want to applaud everyone running for local office. We appreciate you. Jeer, I'm going to jeer myself for not taking a shower because I look like shit today. And also on a more serious note, there was a public comment made by Oscar Schreibel last night at the city council meeting about the 9/11 ceremony. And I know it was a couple of weeks ago, but he talked about how there were 3 former New York City firefighters there who lived through 9/11, one of whom was on a ladder company that was right at the base of the World Trade Centers and was the only surviving member of his fire company. Anyway, sorry. They were all just in the back row of the 9/11 ceremony here. And it was really hard to hear about. Anyway, you guys take over. Sorry.
Yeah, Oscar's comment was, and I thought was about how these firefighters were acknowledged, but more so how a 9/11 ceremonies really should not be politicized. Yeah. That they should be about the first responders. It should not be about mayors and city council and hopefully next year, whoever is the mayor will, and this is again not quite a criticism of Kim, because I think this is how it's been done for since 9/11, since we've had these, but that going forward, 9/11 ceremonies should really be done by the people who answer the call and who are answering the call today.
Sorry, unexpected 9/11 emotion. I'll go back to the shower. Should have taken a shower. Unexpected 9/11 emotion. Apologies. It's just a tough one for me. But I was just really happy that he brought it up because I think it's important. He made a really good point. And, I just wish they hadn't been in the back row. I guess that's what I'll end on. But all right, we're wrapping up another great Saratoga podcast. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate it.
Let's ride on out of here.
Yeah, next week we will be on probably Wednesday and Thursday to get all of our candidates in. So we may see you on a doubleheader next week, but we look forward to it. So thanks, everybody, and we'll sign off.
Stay charming, Saratoga.
Thanks for watching, folks.